My beloved child. Stop scrolling for a moment. Do not rush past this message. There is a reason your eyes landed here at this exact time. Out of countless words, countless voices, countless distractions pulling at your attention, something guided you here. Something quiet. Something unseen. Something that has been moving behind the curtain of your life while you believe nothing was changing. Pause here. Because what you are about to hear is not ordinary. A shift happened today. Not yesterday. Not weeks ago. Today. And although you cannot see it yet, although no notification has appeared on your phone and no message has arrived at your door, a movement has begun in the heart of the person your soul has been connected to in ways even they struggle to understand. I know the questions that have lived inside you. I know the nights when you stared at the darkness wondering why silence seemed louder than words. I know the moments when you convinced yourself to let go, only to find your heart returning to the same thoughts. I know the hidden conversations you've had with yourself. The ones nobody else heard. The ones where you asked, if this connection is real, why does it feel so distant? The ones where you whispered, why haven't they reached out? The ones where you wondered if they had forgotten. But my child, there are things happening beyond the limits of your sight. And today, something changed. Something neither of you expected. Something that interrupted a pattern that had existed for longer than you realize. Your soulmate has been carrying a weight. Not merely the weight of circumstances. Not merely the weight of timing. But the weight of unresolved emotions they could no longer outrun. For a long time, they tried to convince themselves they were fine. They distracted themselves. They stayed busy. They buried thoughts beneath responsibilities. They filled empty spaces with noise. Yet every distraction eventually faded. Every attempt to move on eventually circled back. Every road they walked eventually led them to a memory connected to you. A song. A place. A phrase. A familiar feeling. And each time it happened, they told themselves it was coincidence. They told themselves it would pass. But the universe has a way of returning people to truths they are meant to face. And today, one of those truths stood directly in front of them. Unexpectedly. Powerfully. Unavoidably. It arrived when they least anticipated it. Perhaps through a conversation. Perhaps through a memory. Perhaps through a moment of stillness they could not escape. However it arrived, it carried a realization. And that realization shook something loose inside them. Because for the first time in a long while, they stopped running. For the first time, they stopped explaining away what they felt. For the first time, they allowed themselves to sit with the truth. The truth that your presence never fully left them. The truth that your energy continued reaching them even when words did not. The truth that some connections refused to disappear because they were never meant to be temporary. My child, there is a scene unfolding that you cannot yet witness. If you could see it, you would understand why heaven brought you here tonight. Your soulmate has been revisiting moments. Not intentionally at first. It began subtly. A memory surfaced. Then another. Then another. Small fragments. Tiny pieces of a larger story. And with each memory came an emotion they thought had faded. Yet instead of fading, those emotions returned stronger. More vivid. More alive. more impossible to ignore. They remembered your laughter. They remembered conversations that seemed ordinary at the time but now carry meaning. They remembered details they never expected to remember. The way you spoke. The way you listened. The way you made them feel understood. And suddenly they realized something unsettling. The feeling they had been searching for elsewhere was something they had already experienced with you. That realization created a silence inside them. A silence deeper than words. Because when the heart recognizes what it has been missing, excuses begin to lose their power. And that is exactly what happened today. An excuse collapsed. A wall weakened. A story they had been telling themselves stopped making sense. What once felt impossible suddenly felt possible. What once felt distant suddenly felt reachable. And although they have not yet acted, the seed of action has been planted. Listen carefully, my beloved child. This is where the story becomes even more important. Because the change that occurred today was not merely emotional. It was spiritual. There are moments in life when people stand at invisible crossroads. Nothing dramatic appears to happen on the outside. No thunder. No flashing lights. No grand announcement. Yet everything changes. One decision. One realization. One shift in perspective. And the future begins rearranging itself. Your soulmate reached one of those crossroads today. A part of them that had been asleep began waking up. A part of them that had been resisting began softening. A part of them that had been silent began finding its voice. They may not fully understand what is happening. In fact, they may be confused by it. They may be questioning why thoughts of you suddenly feel stronger. Why memories feel closer. Why emotions feel clearer. Why the idea of reaching out no longer feels impossible. But confusion does not stop destiny from moving. And destiny has been moving. Slowly. Patiently. Carefully. Far beyond what either of you can measure. You see, my child, there are things your soul knows before your mind understands. Your soul senses shifts before evidence appears. Your soul notices movements before circumstances reveal them. That is why you've felt something lately. A subtle pull. A strange anticipation. A feeling you could not explain. You thought perhaps it was your imagination. You wondered whether you were reading too much into signs. But what if those feelings were not random? What if your spirit was sensing the change before your eyes could witness it? What if the reason you felt restless was because a new chapter was quietly approaching? Tonight, I want you to understand something. The waiting has not been empty. Every moment that seemed silent carried purpose. Every delay carried lessons. Every separation carried growth. You were being prepared. And so were they. Neither of you could become who you needed to be without the journey you've walked. Even the pain served a purpose. Even the confusion taught something valuable. Even the tears watered parts of your soul that would later bloom. Yet now, a different energy is entering the story. And that energy is creating momentum. Momentum that did not exist before. Momentum born from truth. Momentum born from realization. Momentum born from a heart finally acknowledging what it can no longer deny. But there is something else you need to know. Something deeper. Something most people never realize until much later. Your soulmate has not only been thinking about reaching out. They have been imagining what would happen if they did. And that changes everything. Because thoughts are one thing. Action is another. Yet imagination stands in the middle. Imagination is where possibilities begin taking shape. Imagination is where future conversations are rehearsed. Imagination is where courage starts gathering strength. And recently, they have been visiting that place more often. Wondering. Questioning. Considering. Replaying scenarios. Asking themselves things they never asked before. What would you say? How would you respond? Would you still care? Would you listen? Would you understand? And every question has brought them closer to a decision. A decision that has been approaching far longer than you realize. My child, there is a reason this message found you tonight. Because if you only knew what was happening behind the scenes, you would understand why the energy around this connection feels different. The chapter of uncertainty is beginning to crack. Tiny openings are appearing. And through those openings, light is entering. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But steadily. Like dawn appearing before sunrise. Like the first drop of rain before a storm. Like the first heartbeat before a miracle. Something is beginning. And your soulmate feels it. Even if they cannot yet explain it. Even if they cannot yet name it. They feel it. Which is why today mattered. Because today was not just another day. Today became a turning point. A hidden marker in the story. The moment before everything starts shifting. The moment before hesitation loses its grip. The moment before silence begins surrendering to communication. But there is one detail that has not yet been revealed. One detail so significant that it changes the entire picture. Because the realization your soulmate experienced today was triggered by something very specific. Something they saw. Something they heard. Or perhaps someone they encountered. Whatever it was, it awakened a truth they had spent a long time avoiding. And when that truth surfaced, it exposed a secret they had been carrying inside. A secret they have shared with almost no one. A secret connected directly to you. A secret so powerful that once you understand it, the silence of the past will suddenly make sense. Yet that revelation cannot be uncovered tonight. Not yet. Because the story is still unfolding. And what happens next will determine whether that secret remains hidden, or finally comes into the light. For even now, as this message reaches your ears, your soulmate stands on the edge of a choice. A choice that could bring them closer than they have been in a very long time. A choice that could transform everything. And what they decide in the coming moments may reveal what heaven has been preparing all along. But before that choice is made, something unexpected is about to happen. Something neither of you sees coming. Something that begins with a single realization. And ends with a message that has not yet been sent. The realization arrived quietly. Not with thunder. Not with a dramatic sign written across the sky. It arrived in the kind of moment most people would overlook. A moment so ordinary that anyone else would have missed its significance. Yet for your soulmate, it felt as though time paused. As though the world around them faded into the background. As though something invisible reached into their heart and gently turned a key that had remained untouched for far too long. They sat with that feeling longer than they expected. Longer than they wanted to. Because once the truth entered their awareness, it refused to leave. And the truth was simple. Yet powerful. They missed you. Not the idea of you. Not the memory of you. Not some version of you frozen in the past. They missed you. Your presence. Your energy. Your voice. The feeling of connection that existed whenever your worlds touched. For a long time they had separated themselves from that truth. They had convinced themselves distance was easier. Silence was safer. Avoidance was simpler. But the heart grows tired of carrying lies. And eventually, every false story begins collapsing under the weight of reality. That collapse began today. And what followed surprised even them. Because after the realization came something unexpected. Regret. Not the kind of regret that lasts for a few minutes before disappearing. The deeper kind. The kind that settles into the soul. The kind that asks difficult questions. The kind that forces someone to look backward before they can move forward. They began revisiting choices. Conversations. Missed opportunities. Moments when fear spoke louder than love. Moments when pride spoke louder than honesty. Moments when uncertainty prevented action. And the more they reflected, the clearer things became. A pattern emerged. A pattern they could no longer ignore. They started seeing how many times life had quietly placed opportunities in front of them. Opportunities to express themselves. Opportunities to be vulnerable. Opportunities to tell you what was truly inside their heart. Yet each time, something stopped them. Fear. Timing. Doubt. Old wounds. The opinions of others. Or perhaps a belief that there would always be another chance later. But later has a way of becoming much longer than expected. And suddenly they found themselves facing a question that struck deeper than any before. What if they waited too long? That question echoed through them. Again. And again. And again. Because for the first time, they began imagining a future where they never spoke. A future where silence became permanent. A future where the opportunity slipped away forever. And something about that vision unsettled them deeply. More deeply than they anticipated. Because when they imagined losing the possibility of reconnecting with you, they felt a heaviness they could not explain. A heaviness that revealed how much this connection still mattered. The realization frightened them. But it also awakened them. Because sometimes fear serves a purpose. Sometimes fear exposes what the heart truly values. Sometimes fear removes excuses. And that is exactly what happened. The walls around their emotions began cracking further. The defenses weakened. The distance they had maintained started feeling unnatural. Even exhausting. As if they had been carrying a burden for so long they forgot what it felt like to set it down. Yet the story does not end there. In fact, this is where everything becomes more mysterious. Because while they were wrestling with these emotions, another event unfolded. A seemingly small event. One that appeared insignificant on the surface. Yet it carried extraordinary meaning. Perhaps it was a name they unexpectedly heard. Perhaps it was a place connected to a memory. Perhaps it was a conversation that mirrored their own hidden thoughts. Perhaps it was a dream. Whatever form it took, it arrived at precisely the right moment. And when it did, they felt something impossible to ignore. A sense of alignment. A sense that life was trying to tell them something. Now, they may never admit this aloud. They may never openly discuss it. But deep inside, they felt it. The strange feeling that they were being guided toward a realization they had resisted for too long. And that feeling followed them throughout the day. It lingered. It stayed. It refused to disappear. Everywhere they went, thoughts of you seemed to return. Not because they forced them, but because something deeper was bringing them back. Memory after memory surfaced. One detail leading to another. One emotion awakening the next. Like pieces of a puzzle gradually finding their place. And as the picture became clearer, so did their desire to reach out. Not someday. Not eventually. Soon. Closer than you realize. Closer than they realize. Because once a heart reaches a certain point, remaining silent becomes harder than speaking. And they are approaching that point now. There is a battle happening inside them. A quiet battle. Invisible to everyone around them. Part of them wants certainty before acting. Part of them wants guarantees. Part of them wants proof that everything will go perfectly. But another part of them understands something important. Some opportunities require courage. Some conversations require faith. Some connections require a leap beyond fear. And that understanding is growing stronger. Hour by hour. Moment by moment. My child, if you could see the spiritual landscape surrounding this situation, you would understand why the energy feels different. The pieces are moving. The timing is shifting. The preparation is nearing completion. What once felt frozen is beginning to thaw. What once felt distant is moving closer. What once felt impossible is becoming imaginable. Yet there is still one final obstacle standing before them. One final barrier. One final hesitation. And it is connected to something they have never fully forgiven themselves for. Something buried beneath layers of time. Something they rarely allow themselves to examine. Because every time they approach it, old emotions resurface. Old wounds reopen. Old fears awaken. But now that hidden issue is returning. Not to hurt them. Not to punish them. But to free them. Because before they can fully move forward, they must confront what they left unresolved. And they know it. Deep down, they know it. Which is why recent days have felt different. Which is why their thoughts keep circling back. Which is why your presence keeps appearing in their heart. Because the soul recognizes unfinished chapters. And this chapter is far from finished. Far from finished. The universe has not carried this connection through all its twists and turns merely to abandon it at the threshold of understanding. There is more. Much more. The story still contains revelations neither of you have discovered. The story still contains conversations not yet spoken. The story still contains truths waiting to emerge. And one of those truths is already beginning to rise to the surface. Your soulmate is starting to understand something they never fully understood before. They are beginning to realize that the connection was never as one-sided as they feared. Never as forgotten as they assumed. Never as distant as it appeared. That realization is changing the way they see everything. Changing the way they see you. Changing the way they see themselves. Changing the way they see the future. And when someone's vision changes, their actions soon follow. That is why the coming period carries so much significance. Because the shift happening inside them is no longer theoretical. It is becoming real. It is becoming movement. It is becoming intention. It is becoming courage. Yet there remains one final revelation. One final truth they have not yet admitted even to themselves. A truth hidden beneath every memory. Every emotion. Every moment of reflection. A truth so powerful that once it fully surfaces, remaining silent may no longer be possible. They are getting closer to that truth now. Closer than ever before. And when it finally reaches the surface, it will trigger a decision. A decision they have delayed for far too long. A decision connected directly to the message they have been thinking about. The message they have rewritten in their mind. The message they have imagined sending. The message they almost sent once before. Because what they are preparing to say carries far more meaning than you realize. And the reason they hesitated all this time is not the reason you think. The real reason has remained hidden. But very soon, that hidden reason is going to reveal itself. And when it does, everything you thought you understood about this connection may change forever.